The first thing I saw was my son's face reflected in the black glass of the security monitor, pale and perfectly still, while 3 armed men tore through the study behind him. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Then the screen went black. "Ethan?" I shouted. Nothing. "Ethan, answer me." Still nothing. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow, and somewhere upstairs a floorboard groaned beneath the weight of someone moving through our house. My son, Noah Bennett, was 17 years old. He was supposed to be asleep in his room. He was supposed to be worrying about exams, basketball, and whether he would get into the engineering program he wanted. He was not supposed to be sitting in a dark room while an outlaw syndicate searched our family home for an inheritance worth nearly $20 million. But that night, everything I believed about my family changed. My father had died 6 months earlier, leaving behind properties, investments, and a private collection of documents that I had barely begun sorting through. The inheritance was complicated, protected by legal trusts, and supposed to remain in the family. I thought the biggest problem would be lawyers arguing over paperwork. I was wrong. The men inside my house weren't lawyers. They weren't relatives. They were criminals, and they knew exactly what they wanted. I grabbed my old field bag from the closet and moved toward the stairs. My wife, Maria, was missing. She had been downstairs when the power failed. Now she was gone. My daughter Claire was away at college. Noah was the only person still inside. Then my phone vibrated. One message appeared from an unknown number. "Bring the inheritance records to the old railway depot. Come alone. Your son lives if you cooperate." I stared at the sentence until the words blurred. My chest tightened. The old instinct returned, the one I had buried beneath years of civilian life. I had served 12 years in the Army, including assignments with units where silence, patience, and observation mattered more than bravado. I wasn't a hacker. I wasn't a movie hero. I was simply a father who had learned how to remain calm when the world became dangerous. And now my training was colliding with the one thing it could never prepare me for, hearing my child's life reduced to a bargaining chip. I moved through the hallway without turning on the lights. A shadow crossed the doorway ahead. I stopped, listened. 2 voices, then 3. One of them said, "The kid wiped the files." Another answered, "Then find the backup." I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. Noah had done something. I didn't know what. But the criminals were afraid of whatever my son had discovered. I reached the basement door and found it open. A laptop sat on the floor, its screen cracked. Beside it was Noah's backpack. Inside was a handwritten note in his familiar handwriting. "Dad, don't trust Mom." I read it once, then again. My wife had vanished. My son had warned me not to trust her, and the men searching my house weren't here because of the inheritance anymore. They were here because Noah had discovered something that could destroy the entire syndicate. The only question was what he had found, and whether I was already too late to save him. My name is Daniel Bennett, and before that night I had spent most of my life believing that ordinary family problems were harder to solve than battlefield problems. In combat, danger usually announces itself. At home, danger smiles across the dinner table. My wife Maria and I had been married for 19 years. We had 2 children, Claire and Noah, and from the outside we looked like the kind of family people envied. We lived in a comfortable house outside the city. I ran a small security consulting business. Maria handled most of the family finances. Claire was studying medicine at college. Noah was the quiet one, always buried in computers, books, or some strange technical project that I rarely understood. He wasn't antisocial. He simply noticed things other people missed. He could remember license plates after seeing them once. He noticed when a website changed by a single sentence. He could tell when someone was lying because their digital trail didn't match their story. I used to tease him about it. "You're going to make a terrible spy," I once told him. He smiled and said, "Good, spies get shot." I laughed. I didn't know how prophetic that conversation would become. When my father, Arthur Bennett, died, the inheritance became the center of everything. Arthur had built his fortune through manufacturing and property investments. He left several warehouses, 2 commercial buildings, financial accounts, and a private trust intended for his grandchildren. The documents were complicated, and because of legal restrictions, nobody could simply walk into a bank and take the money. That should have made the inheritance safe. Instead, it made it more valuable to criminals who knew how to manipulate people. The first warning came from my father's attorney, Harold Mason. He called me late one evening. Daniel, someone has been asking questions about your father's trust. Who? A company calling itself North Star Holdings. I searched the name. Nothing suspicious appeared. It looked legitimate. But Harold had been my father's attorney for 26 years, and if he was concerned, I listened. He told me the company had tried to acquire one of my father's warehouses through an intermediary. I refused. 2 weeks later, Maria began receiving calls from an unknown number. She wouldn't explain them. Then she started asking me questions about the trust. How much is actually available? Who has access? When can the grandchildren receive their portion? I answered because she was my wife. I trusted her. Noah didn't. One evening, he came into my office carrying his laptop. Dad, can I show you something? He pulled up a map. This company that tried to buy Grandpa's warehouse has the same directors as 3 other companies. I leaned closer. So they all use different names, but their addresses overlap. He clicked again, and this guy appears in all of them. A photograph appeared. The man was in his 40s, with gray hair and a narrow face. His name was Victor Sloan. I recognized him. I had seen him at my father's funeral. He had stood near the back of the church and watched our family without speaking. Where did you get this? I asked. Noah shrugged. Public records. Don't dig into this. He looked disappointed. Why? Because some people don't like being watched. He closed the laptop. Okay. But I knew my son. Okay never meant he would stop. It meant he would stop telling me. 3 days later, my father's accountant disappeared. Harold Mason found a threatening message on his office door. Maria began sleeping with her phone under her pillow, and Noah stopped talking about the inheritance altogether. Then one evening, I returned home and found him sitting in the dark. Dad, he said quietly, I think somebody inside our family is helping them. I asked who. He looked toward the hallway. I don't know yet. Then he whispered something that made my stomach tighten. But I think Mom knows more than she's telling us. The next morning, Maria told me she had an appointment across town. She kissed me before leaving, but her lips felt cold against my cheek. I watched her car disappear down the street. 10 minutes later, Noah came into the kitchen. She lied. I turned around. About what? Her appointment. He showed me a message she had accidentally left visible on a shared tablet. It was from Victor Sloan. Tonight. No delays. Noah had copied the message before Maria deleted it. I stared at the screen. How did you do that? He looked uncomfortable. I know how computers work, Dad. That's not what I asked. He lowered his eyes. I found a way to preserve the message. I told him never to do anything illegal. He nodded. Then he said, Dad, they're not just trying to steal the inheritance. Before I could ask what he meant, the doorbell rang. It was Harold Mason. He looked exhausted. He carried a folder under his arm. We need to talk somewhere private. We went into my office. Harold locked the door. Your father's trust contains something they want more than money. I frowned. What? A record of offshore transactions connected to several companies. He opened the folder. Your father discovered financial crimes before he died. He copied everything into a private archive. Where? Harold hesitated. Your father never told me. I looked at the documents. Then why are they coming after us? Harold pointed to one page. Because somebody believes you know where the archive is. I felt a chill run through me. My father had never mentioned an archive. If it existed, I had no idea where it was. Harold continued. Victor Sloan is not just an investor. He's connected to an organized criminal network operating through legitimate businesses. The Syndicate. Harold nodded. That's what law enforcement calls them. Then the office lights flickered. Harold stopped talking. I walked to the window. A black sedan was parked across the street. The driver wasn't looking at the house. He was looking at Harold's office. I turned back. We need to leave. We moved through the rear door. 10 minutes later, Harold's phone rang. He answered. His face changed. What? He listened. Then he handed me the phone. A distorted voice said, Your father should have stayed dead. The line disconnected. Harold looked at me. They know. That afternoon, Noah showed me another discovery. He had found a pattern connecting North Star Holdings to companies registered under different names. He hadn't broken into anything. He had simply pieced together publicly available corporate records, court filings, and property documents in a way most people wouldn't think to do. They've been buying distressed properties near transportation projects, he said. Grandpa's warehouse is sitting on the most valuable parcel. I stared at the map. So the inheritance is a distraction. Partly, Noah pointed to another cluster. These properties all connect to the same financial network. Then he showed me something else. A document bearing my father's signature. It contained a handwritten note. If they ever come for the family, look where the river bends. I remembered my father's old stories about the river warehouse. He had always said the land was worthless until the city announced its development plan. Now everything made sense. The syndicate wasn't simply stealing an inheritance. They were trying to gain control of an entire network of properties before their value exploded. Maria had been receiving money from someone, Harold had been threatened, Noah had uncovered the structure, and my father had left a clue. But there was still one piece missing. Why had Maria lied to me, and how deep was her involvement? That evening, Maria returned home carrying groceries as if nothing had happened. She smiled at Noah, she kissed me, she asked about dinner. I watched her hands. They were steady. Her eyes weren't. "How was your appointment?" I asked. She froze for less than a second. "Fine. Who did you meet?" "A financial advisor. Name, Martin." I nodded. "Last name." Her face tightened. "Why are you interrogating me?" I smiled. "I'm not." She walked into the kitchen. Noah looked at me from the doorway. We didn't speak. Later that night, I found Maria in the garage speaking on her phone. I couldn't hear the other voice, but I heard her say, "He doesn't know." Then she noticed me. "Daniel?" She ended the call immediately. "Who was that?" "Nobody." "Maria." She stepped closer. "You're imagining things." That was the moment I knew she was lying. Not because of her words, because she stopped blinking. It was an old observation habit from my military years. Stress changes tiny things in people's behavior. I didn't confront her. I went upstairs and checked Noah's room. He was awake. "Dad," he whispered, "I found the archive." My heart stopped. "Where?" "Not online." Grandpa hid it physically. He showed me an old photograph of the river warehouse. On the back was a series of numbers. "I think it's a storage reference." We drove there before dawn. The warehouse was abandoned, surrounded by weeds and rusted fencing. My father had owned it for decades. We searched the office. Nothing. Then Noah noticed a loose brick behind an old electrical panel. Inside was a small metal box. My hands were cold as I opened it. Inside was a flash drive, several paper ledgers, and a photograph of my father standing beside a man I didn't recognize. Noah stared at the image. "That's Victor Sloan." I looked closer. My father had known him. The flash drive contained encrypted files, but we didn't try to break into anything. Instead, Noah used legitimate recovery tools and information already provided by Harold to identify the archive's contents: financial records, property transfers, names, dates, payments, enough to expose the syndicate. Then Noah noticed something. "Dad." He pointed to a file label. "Maria Bennett." My stomach dropped. We opened the associated legal documents through Harold's office records. Maria had received a series of payments over the previous year. Not millions. Small amounts, regular amounts, enough to create dependence without attracting immediate attention. I felt betrayed, but I still wanted to believe there was an explanation. Then Noah found a message preserved in the archive. Victor had written to Maria, "Once Daniel is gone, you will receive the first transfer." I closed my eyes. My wife had been bought. The person I had trusted with my family had accepted money in exchange for helping criminals destroy it. Noah looked at me. "What do we do?" I looked at my son. "We don't panic." He nodded. "What then?" I took a breath. "We protect the evidence. We protect Claire. And we let them believe they still control the game." But when we returned home, the front door was open, and from inside came a sound I would never forget. My daughter screaming my name. I ran through the doorway and found Claire standing in the hallway, her hands bound with plastic restraints. Two men stood behind her. Maria was nowhere in sight. One man grabbed Claire's shoulder. "Don't move." I stopped. My body wanted to explode forward, but training taught me something different. Control the first impulse. Control the room. I looked at the exits. I looked at their hands. I looked at Claire's breathing. She was terrified, but conscious. "Let her go," I said. The taller man laughed. "Where's the archive?" "I don't know." He raised his weapon slightly. Wrong answer. Noah stepped into the doorway behind me. "I know where it is." I turned sharply. "Noah, go."
He didn't move. "They want the files." The man looked at him. "You're the computer kid." Noah swallowed. "That's what they call me." The second man approached him. You found the archive. Noah nodded. And you protected it. Yes. I could see fear in my son's eyes, but there was something else too.
Determination. He had spent months quietly studying the syndicate. He understood their structure better than they realized. The taller man demanded the drive. Noah said, "It's useless without the verification key." The man frowned. "What key?" "The one my grandfather designed." That was partly true. The archive required multiple forms of verification, but Noah had never attempted to bypass them. He didn't need to. He only needed the criminals to believe the system was more complicated than it was. I saw what he was doing. He was buying time. I moved one step sideways. The second man shifted his attention. One opening. That's all I needed. The confrontation was fast. I disarmed the closest attacker, forced him away from Claire, and used the furniture to create distance from the second man. There was shouting. A chair shattered. Claire fell behind the sofa. Noah grabbed her and pulled her toward the kitchen. I didn't chase the attackers when they ran. My priority was my family. Claire's wrists were red where the restraints had cut into her skin. "Dad," she whispered. "Mom did this." I looked at her. "What?" "She told them when I would be home." The words landed like a hammer. Maria had betrayed all of us. Not just me, not just the inheritance, her own children. Then Noah showed me something on his phone. "Dad, I found a location tied to Victor. It was an abandoned commercial building. I called Harold. Then I called the authorities. I gave them the evidence and told them everything we knew. I refused to turn this into a private war. My military training had taught me the difference between courage and recklessness. The syndicate wanted me angry. They wanted me to act alone. They wanted me to make a mistake they could exploit. Instead, we built a coordinated case. Federal investigators began tracing the money. Local detectives secured the house. Harold transferred the archive into legal custody. Noah became a critical witness because he had discovered the connections. But the syndicate wasn't finished. Victor sent another message. "You have 12 hours. Bring the drive to the river warehouse, or your wife disappears." I stared at the message. Maria was still alive, somewhere. I hated that my first feeling wasn't relief. It was exhaustion. She had betrayed me, yet I couldn't stop thinking about whether she had been coerced. Then Noah said something that changed everything. "Dad, don't go to the warehouse." "Why?" He turned his phone toward me. "Because Victor isn't there." "How do you know?" He pointed at a pattern in the messages. "Because he's trying to make us look at the wrong place." The real location was a private airfield nearly 40 miles away. Noah had identified it by comparing publicly available property records with the syndicate's known businesses. He hadn't hacked anything. He had simply noticed that several companies associated with Victor shared a management address connected to the airfield's owner. Federal agents moved quickly. I stayed with Claire and Noah at a secure location. For the first time since the nightmare began, we were together in one room with the doors locked and armed protection outside. Noah sat at the table, exhausted. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I know. I just wanted to help Grandpa's family." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You did." He looked at me. "Dad, are you angry with me?" "No. Even though I kept secrets." I took a breath. "I'm angry that you were forced into this. But I'm proud of you for staying calm." Claire sat beside him. "You're still a nerd." Noah laughed. It was the first normal sound in days. Then my phone rang. It was Detective Sarah Collins. "We found Maria." My heart stopped. "Alive?" "Yes, she's at the airfield." "Victor?" "There too." The syndicate had gathered in one place. The operation moved quickly. Agents secured the perimeter while investigators prepared arrest warrants. I was told to stay back. I agreed. I wasn't going to turn a lawful operation into personal revenge. We watched through the command vehicle as agents entered the facility. Minutes later, Victor was arrested. Several others surrendered. Maria was found in an office, frightened and shaken. When they brought her out, she saw me through the window. Her face collapsed. I didn't look away. She had chosen money. She had helped criminals target our family. But she was still the mother of my children. I couldn't pretend those 19 years had never existed. Later, she told investigators the full story. Victor had approached her months earlier. He knew about her debts. He knew about her fears. He promised her financial security if she helped him gain access to the inheritance. She believed the plan would stop at fraud. Then the threats began. "When did you realize they intended to hurt Daniel?" Detective Collins asked. Maria began crying. "When they showed me the weapon." Why didn't you tell him? Because they threatened Claire. I listened from outside the room. Part of me wanted to believe that explanation erased her responsibility. It didn't. She had made choices. Fear explained them. It did not erase them. Noah eventually gave investigators the information needed to reconstruct the syndicate's financial network. The archive exposed dozens of fraudulent transactions and property transfers. Victor and several associates were arrested. The investigation expanded across multiple states. My father's name was cleared. The inheritance was secured under independent legal oversight. But one question remained. Who had been directing Victor? The answer came from a document buried in the archive. A name appeared at the top of a list. Gregory Sloan, Victor's older brother, the real leader. He had been using Victor as the public face while operating through legitimate companies. He had also been the person who originally approached Maria. Gregory had disappeared before the arrests. The authorities believed he had fled. Noah disagreed. "Dad," he said, staring at the document. "He didn't run. Why? Because this file shows he planned for Victor to be arrested." My blood ran cold. "Then what does that mean?" Noah looked at me. "It means Gregory is still watching us." If you're enjoying this tactical family justice story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more daily revenge stories, because the most dangerous person in this entire operation still hasn't been caught. Gregory Sloan didn't disappear. He changed identities. Investigators discovered he had transferred ownership of several companies months before the arrests. He had planned for the syndicate to survive without him. But Noah had found one mistake. Gregory had a habit of reusing the same obscure phrase in internal documents. It appeared in contracts, property filings, and correspondence. That phrase led investigators to a private foundation. The foundation looked charitable. It funded scholarships, community projects, and veterans programs. But behind the paperwork was a financial network connected to the syndicate. Gregory had built legitimacy around criminal money. He had donated to politicians, sponsored local events, and cultivated a reputation as a respectable businessman. That made him more dangerous than Victor. Victor looked like a criminal. Gregory looked like a philanthropist. Federal investigators began building the case quietly. Noah continued helping them organize information, but I insisted that he step away from the technical work. "You've done enough," I told him. "Let the professionals handle it." He didn't argue. That was when I knew he had grown up. 2 weeks later, Gregory contacted me directly. His voice was calm. "Mr. Bennett, Gregory, your son is remarkably talented." My blood went cold. "Don't mention him. You should be proud. Leave my family alone." He laughed softly. "This was never personal. You threatened my children. Business has consequences." I felt my jaw tighten. "You're finished. You think the police can protect you forever?" "No." I paused. "But I know they can protect you from yourself." He hung up. The call was traced, but he had used a system designed to hide his location. Noah listened to the recording afterward. "He's afraid." "Why?" "Because he mentioned me." I looked at him. That's what criminals do when they want leverage. Noah shook his head. "No." Listen to his breathing. I replayed it. Noah was right. Gregory's voice remained controlled, but his breathing changed when he mentioned the investigation. He wasn't confident. He was improvising. That meant the case was closing in. 3 days later, investigators executed warrants at several properties. They found financial records, forged documents, and evidence connecting Gregory to the syndicate. But Gregory himself was gone. Then Claire received an anonymous message. It contained one sentence. "Tell your father the river still remembers." My stomach tightened. It was the phrase from my father's handwritten note. "The river bends." Gregory knew about the archive. He knew about my father. He knew where we lived. We moved the family into secure housing. Law enforcement increased protection. I spent nights awake, listening to every unfamiliar sound. Noah seemed calm, but I knew he was afraid. One night, he came into my room. "Dad? Yeah? If he comes after us, what do we do?" I looked at my son. "We stay together, and if he wants me, he doesn't get you." Noah nodded. "Okay." Then he asked, "Do you regret hiding your military past from us?" I thought about it. "I regret not telling you enough about why I was always so careful." He smiled faintly. "I always thought you were just paranoid." "I was trained to survive." "You did." I looked at him. "We did." But the next morning, our security alarm triggered at exactly 3:17 a.m., and when investigators arrived, they found no intruder, they found something far more disturbing. A photograph had been placed on the front doorstep. It showed our entire family standing outside my father's house years earlier. On the back, one sentence was written, "You found my money, now I will find your weakness." The weakness Gregory believed he could exploit was Noah. He assumed that because my son was intelligent, he would be predictable. He was wrong. Noah understood something criminals often forget. Intelligence isn't about knowing everything, it's about knowing what you don't know. He stopped trying to find Gregory himself and instead gave investigators every piece of information he had. That decision accelerated the investigation. A federal analyst noticed that Gregory's foundation had made a donation to a small rural clinic. That clinic shared a board member with a transportation company connected to one of the missing properties. The chain eventually led to an abandoned estate outside the state. Investigators prepared a warrant. I wasn't allowed to participate. This time, I didn't argue. My job was to keep my family safe. Hours later, the arrest team entered the estate. Gregory was there. He didn't run. He sat at a desk surrounded by papers and photographs. When agents entered, he simply smiled. "You finally found me." They arrested him without resistance. But the real surprise was what they found in the desk. A letter from my father. It had been written years before his death. Gregory had somehow obtained a copy. The letter said that Arthur Bennett had discovered the syndicate's activities and intended to expose them. He had trusted me to protect the family if anything happened. Gregory had interpreted that as a challenge. He believed the inheritance gave him leverage. He believed Maria could be manipulated. He believed Victor could be controlled. And he believed my son was just a frightened teenager. Every assumption had failed. The court proceedings lasted nearly a year. Gregory faced charges for fraud, conspiracy, extortion, and financial crimes. Victor cooperated with prosecutors. Maria accepted responsibility for her role and agreed to testify. I never asked for special treatment. I never asked for revenge. I wanted the truth on paper where nobody could erase it. During one hearing, Gregory looked directly at me. "You think you won?" he asked. I said nothing. He smiled. "Money always survives." I looked at Noah sitting beside me. People matter more. Gregory's smile disappeared. The inheritance was eventually secured. My father's properties remained in the family. Claire received a protected educational fund. Noah received a trust designed to support his education without exposing him to unnecessary financial pressure. But money wasn't what mattered anymore. The family had survived. That was enough. Maria was sentenced for her involvement. I visited her once before she began serving her sentence. She looked older. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "Some days," she nodded. "I deserve that. What you did hurt all of us." She looked at the floor. "I know, but I won't let hatred control my life." She began crying. "I loved you," I answered honestly. "I loved you too," then I stood. But love doesn't erase betrayal. We never spoke again. I left the facility and drove home. Noah was waiting on the porch. "How was it?" he asked. "Hard." "Did she apologize?" "Yes." "Did you forgive her?" I looked at him. Forgiveness isn't always something you give someone else. Sometimes it's something you give yourself so you can stop carrying them. Noah thought about that. Then he smiled. "That sounds like something Grandpa would say." I smiled back. He probably would. Months later, life became quiet again. That was the strangest part. After months of threats, surveillance, arrests, and investigations, normal silence felt almost suspicious. Noah returned to school. Claire went back to college. I rebuilt my consulting business. We sold the house because too many memories were tied to it. We moved into a smaller place where every room felt like a fresh beginning. Noah continued studying technology, but now he wanted to use his abilities ethically. He joined a university program focused on cybersecurity and digital forensics. He told me, "I don't want to become the kind of person who uses intelligence to hurt people." I told him that was exactly the right lesson. He became fascinated with protecting systems rather than breaking them. He helped organize a student project that taught families how to recognize financial scams and identity theft. One evening, I found him sitting at the kitchen table looking through a photograph of Grandpa Arthur. "I miss him," he said. "Me too. Do you think he knew this would happen?" I shook my head. "I think he knew people could become greedy." Noah smiled. He was right. I looked at the photograph. My father had always warned me that wealth attracts attention, but he never taught me how to protect my family from betrayal. That lesson came later. It came through pain. It came through fear. It came through watching my wife choose money over trust. It came through seeing my son become brave before he was ready. One afternoon, Noah asked me about my military career. I had never told him much. This time, I opened the metal case containing my old uniform and photographs. He studied them quietly. "You were really there?" "Yes. Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted you to know me as Dad." He nodded. "I understand." Then he looked at the old photograph of my team. "Were you scared?" I smiled. Every time. He looked surprised. "Then why did you do it?" "Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's deciding what matters more than fear." Noah remembered that. Years later, he would tell me that sentence changed the way he approached everything. Not as a hacker, not as a soldier. As a man who understood responsibility, the inheritance eventually became part of something larger. We created a family foundation in my father's name, supporting education and cybersecurity scholarships for students who couldn't afford them. Noah helped design the program. Claire helped with medical scholarships. Even though Maria was no longer part of our household, we didn't erase her from the family history. We simply stopped letting her actions define our future. There was no dramatic revenge, no burning mansion, no secret execution. The people who stole from us went to court. The money was recovered. The truth became public, and my family rebuilt itself. One ordinary day at a time. That was when I finally understood that the syndicate had made one catastrophic mistake. They thought our inheritance was our greatest asset. It wasn't. Our greatest asset was the fact that when they tried to divide us, they failed. When they threatened us, we stood together. When they tried to turn my son into a weapon, he chose to become a protector instead. 3 years after the arrests, Noah graduated from university. I sat in the audience beside Claire, watching him walk across the stage. He wore a dark suit and carried himself with the quiet confidence I recognized immediately. When his name was called, he smiled. Not the nervous smile of the teenager I had rescued from that dark house, but the steady smile of a young man who knew exactly who he wanted to become. After the ceremony, he hugged me. "You proud?" he asked. I laughed. "More than you know." Claire joined us. Dad cried. "I did not." "You absolutely did." We laughed. For the first time in years, the laughter felt completely clean. No fear underneath it. No hidden phone. No secret messages. No shadow outside the window. Just family. Later that night, Noah and I sat outside under a clear sky. "Dad," he said, "do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't found those records?" I looked at him. Every day. Would they have won? I thought for a moment. Maybe they would have taken the money. He nodded. But they wouldn't have taken us. That answer made me proud. Because he understood what I had spent years trying to teach him. Wealth can be replaced. Property can be rebuilt. Money can be recovered. Trust can be damaged. But family is something you protect before everything else. My father left us an inheritance, but the greatest inheritance wasn't financial. It was the courage to stand together when someone tries to tear you apart. The syndicate believed greed made people powerful. It doesn't. Greed makes people predictable. Victor wanted money. Maria wanted security. Gregory wanted control. Each desire became a weakness they could not hide. Noah wanted something different. He wanted the truth. And because of that, he saw patterns nobody else noticed. He didn't need to become a criminal to defeat criminals. He didn't need to fight them on their terms. He simply helped expose what they were doing and trusted the people who were supposed to enforce the law. I often think about the night I saw my son's face reflected in that black security monitor. He looked terrified. So did I. But neither of us ran from the truth. We faced it. That's what saved us. Not my military training alone, not Noah's technical intelligence alone, not the lawyers, not the investigators. All of it mattered, but the decisive moment came when we chose not to let fear dictate our decisions. The criminals wanted us isolated. We stayed together. They wanted us angry. We stayed disciplined. They wanted us desperate. We stayed patient. And eventually, their entire operation collapsed under the weight of its own lies. Today, Noah works in cybersecurity defense. He helps organizations protect sensitive systems and families protect their identities. Whenever someone asks why he chose that career, he tells them, Because someone once used technology to threaten my family, and I decided I wanted to learn how to stop that from happening to someone else. I don't correct him. I don't tell people about every detail. Some stories belong to the people who lived them. But when I look at my son now, I don't see the frightened teenager surrounded by darkness. I see the man he became. And I know the syndicate didn't steal our inheritance. They only showed us what was truly worth inheriting. The last time I visited my father's grave, I brought Noah with me. We stood beneath the old oak tree where the cemetery became quiet enough to hear the wind moving through the leaves. I placed flowers on the stone. Noah stood beside me with his hands in his pockets. "Grandpa would have liked what you did," I said. Noah smiled. "He would have liked what you did." I looked at the grave. "I didn't do enough." Noah shook his head. "You kept us together." I swallowed hard. For years, I had thought protecting my family meant being strong enough to stop every threat before it reached them. But that isn't possible. You can't stop every betrayal. You can't predict every lie. You can't control every person who enters your life. What you can control is how you respond when the truth finally arrives. Maria betrayed me. Victor threatened us. Gregory tried to destroy everything my father built. But none of them got the final word. They didn't get Claire's future. They didn't get Noah's future. They didn't get my family's name, and they certainly didn't get to decide who my son would become. I looked at Noah and realized that was the real victory, not the money, not the properties, not the arrests. My son had walked through fear and come out with his integrity intact. That was worth more than every dollar in my father's inheritance. As we walked away from the grave, Noah asked me something unexpected. "Dad, if you could go back to the night you found out Mom betrayed you, would you do anything differently?" I stopped. The wind moved through the trees. "Yes." He waited. "I would tell you sooner that being smart doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." He nodded. "I'd tell you the same thing." We walked toward the car together. Behind us, my father's name remained carved into stone. Ahead of us was an ordinary road leading home. Ordinary, that word had once seemed boring to me. Now it felt like a gift. No alarms, no threats, no syndicate, no secret messages, just a father and son driving home after visiting a grave. And maybe that's what justice really looks like. Not revenge, not destruction, not becoming as cruel as the people who hurt you. Justice is surviving them. Justice is protecting the people they tried to destroy. Justice is building a future they can never touch. My son was never their weapon. He was never their weakness. He was the reason we refused to surrender. They thought his knowledge would make him dangerous. Instead, it made him responsible. They thought my military past would make me violent. Instead, it taught me discipline. They thought our inheritance would divide us. Instead, it reminded us what mattered. The syndicate came for money and discovered something they couldn't steal. They discovered a family that refused to break. And when the dust finally settled, they were left with prison cells, ruined reputations, and empty accounts. We were left with something far more valuable, each other. If you're listening to this story and you've ever watched someone become greedy enough to betray their own family, remember this. Money reveals character, but adversity reveals strength. Never measure your family by what it owns. Measure it by what it protects when everything valuable is threatened. Noah didn't save us because he was a military cyber hacker. He saved us because he stayed observant, stayed calm, and chose to use his intelligence responsibly. And I didn't protect my family because I was a former soldier. I protected them because I was their father. That distinction matters. Training can prepare you for danger, but love tells you what is worth protecting. When I think back to that first night, I still remember the black security monitor. I remember Noah's face reflected in the glass. I remember the ringing in my ears when I realized someone inside our own family had opened the door for criminals. I remember the ringing in my ears when I realized someone inside our own family had opened the door for criminals. I remember the moment my son walked into the room and said, "I know where the archive is." He was scared, so was I. But fear didn't stop him. Fear didn't stop Claire. Fear didn't stop me. We moved forward carefully, one decision at a time, until the people who thought they controlled us were sitting behind bars. That is the part I want people to remember. You don't have to become ruthless to defeat ruthless people. You don't have to abandon your principles because someone else abandoned theirs. Sometimes the strongest revenge is simply refusing to let evil determine your character. My family's inheritance survived, but that wasn't the ending. The ending was my son choosing a career that protects others. The ending was Claire building her own future. The ending was me finally understanding that my military past was never the most important thing about me. Being a father was. And when everything else was stripped away, that was enough. So if you're watching this story from somewhere around the world, remember that families can survive betrayal. They can survive fear. They can survive financial loss. They can survive the moment when the person you trusted most turns against you. What matters is what you choose afterward. You can let betrayal consume you, or you can use it as the moment you finally discover your own strength. My son didn't become a weapon for the syndicate. He became a shield for his family, and the criminals who thought they were stealing our future accidentally helped us understand exactly what that future was worth. Where are you watching from? Comment on your city or country below. What kind of story do you want next? Military revenge, psychological thriller, or emotional family justice? And here's the moral question I want you to debate. If you were in my shoes, after discovering that criminals had stolen your family's inheritance and someone inside your own family had helped them, would you have trusted the authorities and let justice take its course, or would the betrayal have pushed you toward taking matters into your own hands? Tell me what you would have chosen and why. And remember, sometimes the most powerful victory isn't watching your enemy fall. It's watching your family rise after they tried to bring you down. Stay strong, protect the people who matter, keep your principles when pressure tells you to abandon them, and never underestimate the quiet person who sees what everyone else misses. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.
Tokyo, 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 Tokyo. Tokyo, what are you doing? Hello, क्या कर रही हो? खेल रही हो? क्यों?